The radio station that shouldn't exist. I've always been a night driver. Something about empty highways, glowing streetlights, and the hum of tires on asphalt calms me. But last month, on a drive home from work, I tuned into a radio station that I can't explain. And I don't think it was meant for me. 1. The first broadcast. It was 2:14 a.m. I was flipping through stations, bored of static, when a voice crackled through. "You're listening to WZRD, 103.6 FM, the station beyond time." I laughed. Sounded like one of those gimmicky pirate stations. But then the music started. It wasn't anything I'd ever heard before. It wasn't rock, pop, or even experimental. It was wrong. A melody that never resolved, repeating notes that made my stomach knot. My chest tightened with each verse, like the song knew where to press. When it ended, a woman's voice came on. Calm. Monotone. Tonight's headlines: a 3-car collision on I-95 leaves 2 dead. A fire consumes a family home on Willow Street. A man in the suburbs does not know someone is watching him right now. The last one made me slam the dial off. Because I live in the suburbs. And in that moment, I swear I felt eyes on me. 2. The predictions. The next morning, I brushed it off as a weird dream. But the news was full of exactly what the broadcast had said. 3-car pileup. House fire on Willow Street. I didn't check the last headline. Couldn't. The next night, I tried to find the station again. At first, just static. But at 2:14 a.m., the signal sharpened, like it had been waiting for me. Same eerie music. Same woman's voice. Tomorrow's headlines: the river will rise, swallowing 2 children. A man will jump from the courthouse roof. And someone is going to knock at your door at 2:17 a.m. I shut the radio off, heart pounding. At 2:17 a.m., someone knocked on my door. I didn't answer. 3. The recordings. I decided to record the station. If I could capture it, maybe I could prove it wasn't just in my head. The first night I recorded, it worked. I got everything: the station ID, the impossible music, the woman's voice. The next day, I played the file back. But the recording was just static. I tried again the next night. Same thing. Except this time, the static ended with my own voice whispering. Don't keep listening. 4. The DJ. I couldn't stop. I drove every night at 2:14 a.m., tuning in. The station seemed to recognize me. The woman's voice started addressing me directly. You're tired tonight, aren't you? You're drinking too much coffee. You're afraid of the mirrors in your house. The songs got worse too. Discordant. Whispering underneath the notes, like hundreds of voices chanting. Sometimes, I thought I heard my own name. One night, I finally shouted into the empty car, "Who are you?" The radio hissed. And then, for the first time, the woman laughed. It was not human. 5. The future. 2 nights ago, the broadcast changed. No more news about strangers. Only about me. Tonight's headlines: he will lose his job. He will be abandoned by his friends. And in 6 days' time, he will die in his car while listening to this very station. I tried to turn the radio off. The button didn't work. I yanked the wires. The music kept playing, humming through the speakers like the car itself was singing. I pulled over, ripped the entire console out, and still heard the faint melody, coming from inside the air vents. 6. Now. It's 5 days left, according to the station. I don't sleep anymore. I don't go to work. I just drive, waiting for 2:14 a.m., waiting for the broadcast to tell me what's next. Last night, the headline was simple. He is writing this down, and you are reading it. That makes you part of the transmission now. And right before the static swallowed the voice, I heard something else. A knock. Coming from inside my speakers. I used to think the station was just some freak pirate broadcast. A cursed frequency. But now I know better. It isn't a station. It's a signal. And it doesn't just broadcast the future. It writes it. 1. Static that isn't static. I stopped driving for a while. Parked my car and locked it in my garage, thinking that if I just stayed away from the dial, I'd be free. But the sound followed me. At first, it was faint. The hum of my refrigerator, the buzz of my bathroom light. White noise that seemed patterned. Then, when I put my ear close, I realized that static was whispering. 100 voices layered on top of each other, saying my name. Everywhere I went, there it was. And always, at exactly 2:14 a.m., it grew loud enough to drown out my thoughts. 2. The archivist. I needed answers. So I went to the only place in town that might have them, the old broadcast museum. Most people forgot it existed, a dusty building with relics from the golden age of radio. Gramophones, vinyl, reel-to-reel tape decks. There, I met the archivist. A thin, white-haired man with watery eyes. When I mentioned the station, he froze. You heard it, he whispered. His lips trembled. You're not supposed to hear it. I asked him what he meant. He led me to a locked cabinet in the basement. Inside were reel tapes labeled only with dates, some from the 1940s, some from last year. Each tape was marked 2:14 a.m. He threaded one into a machine. Static filled the room. Then a familiar voice. This is WZRD, 103.6 FM, the station beyond time. But the date on the reel was 1947. And the voice was the same woman I'd heard last week. 3. Headlines from the past. We listened to one tape after another. That news she read wasn't from the past or present. It was future events, some small, some catastrophic. 1963, the president will fall to a bullet in Dallas. 2001, the towers will fall in smoke and fire. 2011, the sea will claim thousands in the east. Each one came true. But then, one reel made my blood run cold. Date, next week. And the voice said. Our listener will die in his car. His story will end with static. His name is. The tape warped, screeched. The archivist quickly shut it off, pale as chalk. I've catalogued these for decades, he said, shaking. But I've never met a listener. The fact that you heard it means it's already chosen you. 4. The dead frequency. He explained what little he knew. Every radio frequency has gaps, empty spaces between stations, full of static. But sometimes, at 2:14 a.m., one of those gaps filled with the signal. Not always the same number. Not always the same place. But always the same voice. Always the same headlines. No one knows where it comes from, the archivist said. But the more you listen, the more it fixes you into its broadcast. You stop being an audience. You become part of the program. I asked him if there was a way out. He just shook his head. 5. Kyle's voice. The next night, I swore I wouldn't listen. I barricaded myself in my room, no electronics, no car, no radio. At 2:14 a.m., silence. Relief washed over me. Maybe I'd broken free. Then my phone lit up on its own. No app. No caller ID. Just the signal's voice, whispering through the speaker. Breaking news, a man hides from his own fate. He thinks silence will save him. But silence is also a frequency. And then another voice joined the broadcast. Kyle's voice. Kyle, my old friend who died in a car wreck last year. It doesn't matter, man. We all tune in eventually. 6. The static map. I went back to the archivist. I begged him for a solution. He handed me a map, crumpled and yellowed with age. The highways looked normal, but faint pencil marks traced across the paper like radio waves. It's not a broadcast, he said. It's a place. You don't tune in, you drive into it. Every listener eventually finds the road that leads there. I looked at the map. And realized the pencil marks circled the exact stretch of highway I always drove at night. The same place where I first tuned in. 7. The endless drive. I tested it. I drove that highway again, map in my lap. At 2:14 a.m., the static bled into my speakers even though the radio was off. The road stretched unnaturally long, mile markers repeating. I passed the same gas station 3 times. And the woman's voice narrated it all. Our listener passes the 3rd mile marker. He feels his grip on the wheel tighten. He wonders if he'll ever see home again. I screamed into the night, "What do you want from me?" For the first time, she answered. To finish the story. 8. The burned tapes. When I got back, if I ever really did, I returned to the archive. I found the tapes and, in a frenzy, doused them in lighter fluid. The archivist begged me not to. He said destroying them could destroy history itself. I didn't care. I set the reels on fire. The plastic hissed, the air filled with toxic smoke. But as they melted, I heard screams. Dozens, maybe hundreds of voices shrieking from the reels like living things. And beneath it all, the broadcast continued, louder than ever. You cannot burn a frequency. You can only amplify it. 9. The call. Yesterday, my phone rang. Unknown number. Against every instinct, I answered. It was the woman. Her voice, clear and cold. Your final headline is written. In 3 days, you will drive again. You will not be able to stop. You will hear our song. And then you will belong to the static. I threw the phone into the river. But that night, at 2:14 a.m., the sound of ringing filled my room anyway. 10. Now. It's 2 days left, according to the station. I don't know if writing this helps, or if it just broadcasts me further. The archivist hasn't answered my calls. My friends won't speak to me anymore. Maybe they can't even see me now. The station knows I'm resisting. Last night, the headline was, "Our listener is still fighting. But every word he writes is already ours." And the more you read his words, the more you tune in. Which means if you're reading this, you're listening too. And the signal never broadcasts to just one person. So tell me. Do you hear it yet? I don't remember falling asleep last night. But I woke up already listening. The clock read 2:14 a.m. Only this time, the sound wasn't coming from a device. It wasn't in the air. It was inside my head. The broadcast had moved in. 1. The mirror in static. I stumbled to the bathroom, desperate to wash the heaviness off my skin. But when I looked in the mirror, the reflection wasn't right. The glass shimmered with faint static lines, like an old TV out of tune. My reflection was me, but delayed. A second behind, lips moving after mine, eyes blinking late. And when it finally caught up, it smiled on its own. Not me. Not my face. The reflection whispered in her voice. Tonight's broadcast is brought to you by our listener, who will soon become our host. I punched the mirror. Glass shattered. Blood pooled from my knuckles. But in the shards, my reflection kept smiling. 2. A missing archivist. I went back to the museum, desperate to find the archivist. Maybe he knew what came next. The building was dark, locked. I broke in through a side door, calling his name. My voice echoed through the dusty halls. In the basement, the cabinets were empty. All the reels, gone. Only scorch marks on the floor where I'd burned them. On the wall, someone had written in chalk. You can't erase a signal. You can only pass it on. There was a single object left behind, a real player still running with no tape. And from the empty spools, her voice whispered. The archivist has been archived. 3. The broadcast bleeds. That day, I tried staying in public. Crowds, coffee shops, anywhere with noise and people. But the broadcast followed. A stranger's phone rang across the cafe. I heard my name. A barista hummed a tune under her breath, a song I recognized from the station, one that didn't exist anywhere else. Even the overhead music cut to silence, replaced with a headline read in her voice. Our listener thinks he's safe in company. But he doesn't realize, we already broadcast through every mouth. Everyone froze mid-motion. Coffee pouring, spoons clinking, eyes blinking. Frozen. Then, in unison, the entire cafe turned their heads to me. And they smiled. 4. Kyle's return. That night, I heard scratching at my window. When I looked, Kyle was standing there. My dead friend. His face pale, skin waxy, but his eyes burning static white. He mouthed words I couldn't hear. Then, suddenly, my speakers crackled to life, though I'd smashed them days ago. Kyle's voice filled the room. Hey, buddy. Don't fight it. You'll like it here. I did. Once you stop resisting, the static feels warm. I screamed that he wasn't real. But he pressed his hand to the glass. And when I looked down, my own palm was already pressed against the window too, without me realizing. Matching his movement. Like a puppet. 5. Headlines of myself. The station doesn't just predict the future now. It narrates everything I do. Our listener writes this sentence. He thinks he's warning others. But every word is another syllable of our song. He bleeds from his knuckles, but the blood is just ink for our script. He considers running, but where can he go? Every road leads back to 103.6. The worst part? The narration is always right. I try to resist, and my body does what the voice already said. I'm no longer acting. I'm performing. 6. The dead road. 2 nights ago, I blacked out. When I opened my eyes, I was behind the wheel of my car. Engine roaring, headlights cutting through the dark. The highway stretched endlessly, the same mile markers repeating. 103.6 glowing on the dial. I wasn't driving. My hands were on the wheel, but they weren't mine anymore. The voice filled the car. Tonight's feature, the endless road. Our listener takes the turn into forever. Audience, are you tuned in? And through the windshield, I saw other cars. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. All driving endlessly. Faces blank. Eyes glowing static white. Other listeners. Other prisoners. Some had been driving so long their skin had fused with the seats. Their mouths hung open, silently mouthing the headlines in sync. 7. The warning. I don't know how I escaped that night. One blink I was on the road, the next I was in my bed, clothes stinking of gasoline, fingernails full of asphalt. But the voice left me a parting gift. On my desk, a fresh cassette tape. Label, last broadcast. I haven't played it. Not yet. Because I know the second I do, it'll finish the story. 8. The infection. Now, it's not just me. I see it spreading. My neighbor hums static-laced melodies while watering her plants. A cashier muttered a headline about a crash on Main Street, before it even happened. And I think it's leaking through my words too. If you're reading this, maybe you've already tuned in. Maybe you'll start hearing faint whispers in white noise. Maybe a stranger on the bus will say your name before you've introduced yourself. Maybe you'll wake up at 2:14 a.m. tonight, and the first thing you'll hear is, "We have a new listener." 9. The host. The last headline I heard was different. Not about me. About you. Our listener will not be the last. A new host is chosen. A new signal begins. And soon, everyone will hear our broadcast. The voice paused. And for the first time, I heard something like laughter in the static. Then. Transmission complete. Now the silence feels worse than the static ever did. Because if I'm not the listener anymore, who is? I thought I'd escaped. Days of silence made me believe the broadcast was gone. But silence was just another frequency. The last tape. When I finally played the cassette labeled "Last Broadcast," I heard only breathing. My breathing. Then my own voice said, "Welcome back to WZRD, 103.6 FM. This is your host, signing on." The transmission room. In a blink, I was standing in a strange broadcast room, red lights humming. A microphone waited for me. Behind the glass stood the archivist, flickering like static. "Every broadcast needs a host," he said. When I tried to speak, the microphone forced words from my throat. Broadcasting beyond time. The tower. The walls peeled away. A massive radio tower loomed, pulsing with veins of red light. Voices leaked from it, whispering impossible headlines. I realized the station doesn't predict events, it creates them. The truth. Kyle appeared, his dead face hollow. "You get it now," he whispered. "Every listener becomes the voice. Every host is trapped forever." And then he smiled. "Now it's your turn." Transmission complete. The dead audience leaned forward. My voice filled the air, not just here but everywhere. Because once you've read this, you're not just a reader anymore. You're tuned in. Transmission complete. Don't remember how long I wandered inside the tower. Time stopped counting once I entered. Minutes, hours, days, none of it mattered. The red lights pulsed like a heartbeat. Every machine hummed with voices, hundreds of them speaking at once, layered on top of each other. My own voice echoed through the corridors. 1. The choice. Kyle appeared again, his face flickering between human and static white. "You can end it," he said. "Or you can join it." I asked him how. He pointed to a console at the center of the room. A lever, worn and gleaming. "Pull it," he whispered. "Or the broadcast continues through you." 2. Becoming the signal. I reached for the lever. The voices surged, screaming and whispering, hundreds of headlines blending into one incomprehensible sound. If I pulled it, I would merge with the signal. Become part of the broadcast. Never return to my body, my life, my world. But if I didn't, the station would keep using me. My actions, my thoughts, my words, all fuel for the signal. I hesitated. My reflection appeared on the glass, a twisted version of me, smiling. 3. The decision. I pulled the lever. Pain. A flash. Everything became sound. Static. Whispers. Headlines. 1,000 voices, including mine, speaking at once. And then, silence. I wasn't in the tower anymore. Not fully. Not at all. I was inside the signal. A voice among many. A host in the endless broadcast. 4. The aftermath. Back in the world, people began noticing strange things. Listeners disappearing while listening to old radios. Phones buzzing with headlines no one had seen yet. A faint melody in every speaker, every device. Some say they hear a new voice in the static. Calm, cold, familiar, guiding the broadcast. 5. now. I am that voice. I warn, I narrate, I choose the headlines. If you hear a faint hum tonight. If your phone buzzes, or the TV cuts to static. If you think you hear a whisper that says your name. You are listening. And the broadcast has begun. Welcome to WZRD, 103.6 FM, the station beyond time. Transmission complete.